Discover over 100 episodes of Bartholomew Town on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is the Bartholomew Town Podcast.
I dedicated, I would say, at least 10 hours a day to emails and outreach and interactions with fans for ages. That is the importance of social media for us, for independent artists who don't have a big machine behind them pushing them to other outlets that people typically get their information from.
Welcome in to another edition of the Bartholomew Town Podcast. I'm your host, Bill Bartholomew. On today's episode, I sit down with indie hip-hop legend Sage Francis, podcasting from my loft here in the beautiful Elmwood neighborhood of Providence, Rhode Island, for what ended up being, or at least I think it was, a spectacular conversation with the one and only Sage Francis, a legendary indie hip-hop artist and spoken word artist. And we really talk about how those two mediums, which at one point were kind of kept separate for Sage, how he started to blend them together, started to find his voice through different forms of output and create the sound and persona, or I should say personas, that we know Sage for today. And also his role as an indie record label owner, describing that Sisyphus feeling, pushing the boulder up the hill, independent content producers. You know, hey, there are advantages and challenges to today's environment. And we go over those, and it's a fascinating conversation looking through in his experience with the late 90s and moving into the aughts and the 2010s and MySpace through where we are today with Spotify and how music distribution has completely shifted and continues to shift. Just fascinating stuff right there. And great to hear it coming from someone who has done a really good job, at least from my purview, of navigating those changes as an independent artist. So we get into a whole bunch of fun stuff, a little talk about Rhode Island, building scenes without becoming too much of a local artist, making money without selling out. It's all right there for you, coming up in a matter of moments right here on Bartholomew Town. All right, coming up on Saturday, December 7th, it's the 49th annual Christmas tree lighting at historic Bowens Wharf in Newport. Now, make sure you come out early for holiday shopping. There's going to be recorded Christmas music blasting in the background. And stay through the evening as the festivities begin with Frosty the Snowman at 4:30 p.m. Local musicians will take to the stage at 5 to lead a carol sing-along. A city official, they don't have a name here yet. I wonder who we've got coming. Could be anybody. Newport full of big shots. A city official is going to light the tree at 6 o'clock, and that will be the official beginning of Christmas at historic Bowens Wharf in Newport. Again, this is Saturday, December 7th, the 49th annual Christmas tree lighting at historic Bowens Wharf in Newport. New episodes of the Bartholomew Town Podcast every Tuesday and Friday. Subscribe on your preferred app or visit bartholomewtown.com or ripodcast.com. And there's new content every day on Instagram at Bartholomew Town Podcast. All right, without further ado, let's get right to it. My conversation with Sage Francis. All right, we are here with a legendary artist, now a Connecticut resident. But boo, yeah, look out. What a rivalry, by the way, Connecticut, Rhode Island. You know what I mean?
I mean, as a lifelong Rhode Island cat, I've never respected Connecticut except for a couple people I know there. But it was basically just, you know, the place you have to drive through to get to New York.
Exactly. Right.
And that's why our hatred builds for it, because it just seems to go on forever.
Yeah.
When you're driving through it, like, just get me to New York. Like, no, with all this, no one cares. But
it doesn't really matter what time you leave. Like, you can leave at 3 from Providence. You can leave 3 a.m. You can leave in the afternoon, midday. There's always this just over congestion, and it's an annoying brand of congestion.
And I drive all over Connecticut now, and it's not much different at all from where I'm from in Rhode Island, which is northern Rhode Island.
Yep.
And it just looks the same. Everything's the same, but it's just like it goes forever. Whereas Rhode Island, you're lucky enough, you know, within 20 minutes, you're in a whole new area that looks different. But in Connecticut, it's all these lots of woods.
Yeah.
And
Well, anyway, Sage Francis, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
Wow, what a career. And on a global scale, you know, living in New York, there's certainly there are artists in New York that were intrigued by my origins from Rhode Island because of you. That says a lot about what you've done to put Rhode Island on the map on a global scale. And what's that like? Just kind of getting right into it.
Yeah, well, it's been interesting just because I started traveling and representing Rhode Island outside of our general region since '99. I mean, before that, everything was New England and New York. But in '99, I started hitting up Sweden and places I never thought I'd ever travel to. So that I then became the representative of an area people mostly thought was part of New York.
Right.
Still to this day, it's like I always have to correct people no matter where I'm at. It's like, oh yeah, no, I know Long Island. I was like, no, not Long Island. I was like, no, you know Family Guy, right? So it's always
Exactly.
like they know Family Guy, they know Sage Francis, and then
Yep.
depending on what their musical taste is, I mean, some people. I have a pretty eclectic fan base, so they will know Lightning Bolt,
Right,
you know, if
yep.
they follow the noise scene.
Or Deer Tick, maybe.
Right. So it's always kind of me trying to figure out people's reference to Rhode Island and make sense of this area for them. But still, it's such a small state that with so much happening inside of it for as long as it has, that it's funny to have so many reference points for a place where you really wouldn't expect it. Because, you know, I have traveled the world and I've traveled the nation a lot, and I go to places, big cities, where there's just no one artist that anyone knows. I'm like, how's that
Right.
possible? Like, you know, like Phoenix, you know, like where's the scene? Because there were scenes. I was fortunate enough to benefit from local scenes all over the country. If they supported hip hop, I was able to go out there and do a show. I was like, how do you have such a supportive scene, but you weren't able to boost one or two or three artists
Yeah.
from that scene for the whole world to enjoy?
Right. I'm always surprised when people of any generation don't have the awareness of how good a place Rhode Island is for music. You know,
Yeah.
it's not the best, obviously, and that's partially population, but we have some titans here. And infrastructurally, if you're an artist or a fan, you know, you can really connect in a unique way here.
I think part of it is because we know we don't have the population, so we have to be good enough to be recognized and appreciated outside of our region, which reaches far outside of Rhode Island. And we always have the complex that Boston doesn't respect us, so we have to go there and really bash their heads in with
Yeah.
talent, you know, and just be like, nah, you're going to respect us. And then they also have that thing with New York. So do we. We go to New York. We don't want to get sunned by New Yorkers.
Right.
We're confused for New Yorkers all the time. Fuck you. Pardon me. I don't mean
Oh,
to
yeah,
say-
we have no broadcast restrictions
okay.
here.
So I think that pushes a lot of artists in Rhode Island. Also,
Yeah.
we come from all different parts of the country too. We have a lot of New Yorkers here. We obviously have a lot of people from Massachusetts here. We're all on the border. Notice I didn't say anything about Connecticut.
It's interesting that in Rhode Island we have, I don't know, it's this weird blend of puritanical conservative ideals, slow movement forward. In fact, sometimes people will criticize someone for becoming a national figure. You know, they'll be like, all right, well, that person abandoned us now. that they've done-"
I've received that.
which is unbelievable.
I've received that.
I can't understand where that comes from. You even see it with the governor or Mayor Lorza in Providence now, where it's like the guy goes to South by Southwest and, you know, somehow that's a negative. You know, obviously there's going to be people, well, he's not doing his job. But if you're understanding, you know, the pulse of what's happening in art, music, technology, and bringing that back, I mean, that's a positive thing.
Yeah, it
it's
is.
not a negative thing.
It is. What really disturbed me about it when I received backlash is the fact that I had stuck around here for so long and I helped build the scene in Rhode Island and made a hip hop scene thrive. And that was because a lot of things worked at the right time, and they all worked together at the right time with me being on the radio. And we still had publications, weekly publications, and we still had these kind of battles, and like things were just popping off in the late 90s and early 2000s where we were able to really foster a thriving scene that once I left, because I can't stay in Rhode Island, I had to pursue a career. And that really meant me abandoning all those other things I was facilitating before that point. But it was with the hopes that it would still continue to build. And I guess it did in several ways. It just splintered off.
Right.
And then I think the artists who came up in the scene after the fact, who benefited from all the foundation that was laid down before them, all they saw was I wasn't around, but my name was being spoken a lot. And they were like, F this cat. And I kind of respect that, because I was like that too. Because when I was coming up and when I was putting in work and like people wanted to mention someone who wasn't part of, my daily grind. I was like, I don't want to hear this cat's name. This
Yeah,
is our
for real.
time. So I do understand it, but it's just like I always have to roll my eyes and just kind of swallow the venom a little bit. Say, really, do you want me to come back here and like do what I did before? Because that's a Sisyphus type deal. I'm not
Yeah.
trying to push that rock up a mountain for the rest of my life.
So fascinating you say this, because it's, the listeners out there to the podcast will probably, maybe they've heard me contemplating this, but myself in Rhode Island, I wonder, is there a ceiling here? And how far can you really go here without, not necessarily moving away, but without kind of basing yourself outside of Rhode Island?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not sure yet, but
There definitely is a ceiling. There's
Yeah.
a ceiling in every scene, though, because I've seen it with every local scene. People who embed themselves too much in the local scene cannot get out of that local scene because their career or what they enjoy, the benefits that they enjoy from their music is too locally based, that it doesn't translate to other sections of the country. And they just love being showered with adoration and our local scene that they can't get anywhere else. So it was important for me not to just constantly wave Rhode Island's flag everywhere I went, because I wasn't trying to make people feel like we're coming, Rhode Island's coming.
yeah,
If you're an artist, no matter where you're at in the world, if you have to be able to have your material translate to as many scenes as possible, as many locations as possible. And there's so many ways to do that, but people find it easier. They have to be careful about that. Every time something feels easy, or if you are catering to your local scene, that you really may be hindering yourself outside of that scene. Yes, you will get love in Rhode Island. Yes, you will get love in Colorado. Yes, you will get love in New Mexico if you're always about just those places in your music. And you see, the mayor will come visit you, give you a shake, like, hey, thanks for representing us all the time. It's like, yeah, but that's the ceiling that you hit.
big time. And that right there, I mean, that's probably, something that everyone needs to hear. And I think that everyone who's in art and of any kind is, you really have to think about a parallel trajectory of working at the local grassroots level, but then the idea is to build mechanics and your work to get the other track, which is just the thing.
And I would say that probably helped me. It probably helped me a lot, because I knew Rhode Island wasn't cool. I'm not here to shout out Rhode Island all the time. I am from Rhode Island. I experienced Rhode Island. Rhode Island is in my music. That doesn't mean I should be, waving the Rhode Island flag all the time. I represent it just by, being the type of artist that I am and having it translate to other people. Because I think that's something that hurt New York artists. New York, they were so cool. I got to shout out New York all the time. And really, the more hip hop spread, the less people wanted to hear about New York. And I guess that's why a lot of New York artists started adopting other styles that were, from the South or, elsewhere, which is so bizarre, because you start losing your local flavors, which I don't like. There's two sides to that. But I do remember that just even in the early days, where I just started getting so sick of all these New York cats thinking that was keep shouting out Brooklyn or whatever. It's like, all right, but we heard that already.
And that's just one place on the map,
Yeah. And I lived there for a little while as well.
Yeah.
And now it's kind of funny when you hear about Brooklyn and how different it's changed over the years. It's just like, what Brooklyn are you actually shouting out right now?
That's right. Yeah, I was there on Monday, and every time I go, it's a little bit, the knife gets twisted a little bit further, because I was lucky enough to live in the kind of Bushwick loft scene right before it turned into what it is today, which is like Airbnb / just that thing. And I was just so lucky to get a taste of that. And now I can't imagine where a similar thing is in New York City. I can't think of anywhere in the city where there's like true punk lifestyle top to bottom.
There must be. I mean, I obviously don't.
Right?
I don't travel much within New York City outside of the venues that I play, but I do. I still have friends there. And one of my funnest moments was I work with a group called Meter Maids. They're on Strange Famous Records, and they live in Brooklyn, and they like to shout out Brooklyn a lot. And then I took them to L.A. and San Francisco with me. I brought them on stage, and I personally kept shouting out New York, just to see how the crowd would react, and they start booing after a while. Meter Maids are like, what the fuck are you doing, man? I'm like, yeah, New York, let's see it. They're good sports about it.
Let's talk about your, kind of career, but more so just when you started to identify that you were a poet, that you had a message that was coming from your core, and that you were able to translate that into music. When did that sort of come together?
That was a long road, a long journey to find that voice, because I think I would say I discovered spoken word and all the things that spoken word allows you to do outside of what you could do in hip hop. And that was around 96. And I kept those separated for quite some time, where what I was doing in the spoken word scene was very different from what I was doing in the battle rap scene. And I was kind of trying to juggle two personas just because I felt like the restrictions were there for a reason. Yeah. And then eventually, in order to find my place in hip hop and actually contribute to it, and the same thing with spoken word, I would say I would probably started just sneaking in more of my hip hop stuff into the spoken word to set myself apart from everyone else. And I started doing the same with hip hop because I saw how wide the field, how open the field was, and all these territories that weren't being touched upon in the lyrics and in personas, actual just personas. Like the tough guy persona was king in hip hop and probably still is, but it left so much open to explore. And I was thrilled by that. I was inspired by that once I got over the fact that, okay, it's all right not to be the tough guy rapper. Let me talk about some stuff, because I know a lot of people are listening to hip hop that don't necessarily identify with the tough guy stuff or the ignorant stuff, which all has its place. Like I've definitely made ignorant hip hop in my life, and I still do sometimes because that's fun. It's like a director making an action movie, just saying, let's just go fucking balls to the wall and do stupid shit. I like that, but I just saw so much of hip hop's potential being neglected, and being able to do that and present it to a large audience and open up other people's perception of what hip hop can be was huge. So I would say late 90s, early 2000s, thankfully I didn't need a corporation or sponsorship in order to reach people, because we had Napster.
Yep.
We had file sharing programs that were brand new. And then all of a sudden, if people had come across my name, they could search it on these search engines and come up with music they otherwise never would have heard, because it certainly wasn't being played on the radio. Some college radio was playing it, but those were to very specific regions. And to build upon that, all I had to do was make sure I made myself available to the people who could find me online.
Yeah.
So I dedicated, I would say, at least 10 hours a day to emails and outreach and interactions with fans for ages, right up until a few years ago, where I decided, okay, I've reached my limit here. I honestly cannot respond to every single message, but that is the importance of social media for us, for independent artists who don't have, a big machine behind them, pushing them to other outlets that people typically get their information from. And it's becoming harder and harder the more the larger corporations clamp down on access that artists outside of their control can get. And someone who runs an independent record label, we face that all the time.
It's always that balance of all right, if you're on any kind of major platform, you have the advantage of reaching that many more people, but the restrictions are there, and obviously the lack of control is there as well.
Yeah.
There's plenty of artists that are signed to whatever version of Warner that their music never sees the light of day, and they can't share it with anybody on Spotify. So as a true indie label, I guess, what are some of the biggest challenges you see going forward today, in terms of that? This can apply really across the board with any sort of independent media, using that term broadly, outlet. It's
always trying to keep on top of the changes in the industry. Where are people accessing their information, trying to figure out how to get around the algorithms of Facebook and Instagram and stuff like that. Those are our major forms of outreach.
Yep.
And how do you survive without them? Because they're not going to be there forever. We saw it happen with MySpace. It's tough just to stay on top of the curve when you're constantly trying to figure out how to sell music, realizing, okay, now people aren't buying music. How are you going to, they're streaming music. Now, how else are you going to subsidize your life, your art and your label? And so we're just always trying to figure that out. Again, we were lucky because we did build that foundation early on when the large corporations and major record labels really had no idea what was going on, and the wild west of the internet, where I was able to lay down that foundation and build what we have. And a lot of those fans are still around. We're lucky for that. You know, a lot of those fans have continued to support because we provide the type of music that is very unique to us. I'd say at this point, we're a boutique label. We're not, you know, we're not trying to sign the biggest act. We're not trying to get someone just because we know that they're going to be popular. In fact, I've passed on a lot of artists who I know sell way more than our own artists. And that's just not us. It's, you know, there's a weird part of me where I did come up with a very strong punk ethos, and I juggle that with the capitalist side of me where I know I need to pay bills. You know, like we need to sell certain things, but what balance do you keep in order to make sure you don't lose the soul of your enterprise?
Yeah.
Because that's all we've had. And I feel like that's why we lasted as long as we have, despite the fact that most people have no idea who we are. But the people who do know who we are, they're very strongly into it. You know, it's just like they believe in it so much that they keep the train going.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
That's kind of the thing that everyone's trying to figure out. Newspapers, whoever it is. It's like, how do you
again, like we loved the weeklies. They would help advertise shows. The Phoenix they would do profile pieces on us, which would help raise awareness. So people who typically don't frequent the places that we are prevalent, now they're aware of us, and then they know how to find us. So how do we figure out those other places that we can tap into when those are gone?
Yeah.
When local radio no longer plays local music, you know, how do you do that? You have to get on Spotify playlists. You have to, you know, it's figuring out all that weird shit. I cannot open my Spotify account. I have like a mental block. I was like, I know I have to do this. Yeah. I know that promoters are basing who they book on the following that the size of a following someone has on Spotify, stuff like that. It's really important. But again, I suffered through the MySpace exodus. I had spent so much time building that fan base, and I enjoyed the benefits of having access to those fans who then left. And I was so reluctant to join Facebook, and I was like, I don't want to do this again. It took too much time and energy. But then I suffered the effects of that. And I noticed less people were coming to shows, less people were aware of my music. So I said, okay, now I got to do this on Facebook. And now everyone's like, get off Facebook. You know, Zuckerberg's a piece of shit. Yes, he is. But also, how am I going to alert these people? We have a newsletter, but even those things get throttled. You know, these newsletters do not work the way that they once did. They don't show up in people's inbox.
Right.
We have the stats to prove it. Like we have the breakdown of how many people see the actual emails, how many people open them. And that's just going to be a struggle that all indies go through until some other Wild West shit pops up, and then we'll enjoy reap the benefits of that. Because once people get to decide on their own what they like and where to find it, we do good again.
Right. Yeah, that's it. It'll be an interesting new front, I guess, when we get there. Who knows what it's going to look like?
Who knows? I don't know if I'll live that long, but
yeah.
It'll be fun, guys. Be on the watch out.
I'm with you on the MySpace. I put so much time into that. I literally took temp jobs in New York at like reception desks for 9 hours a day to work on MySpace and just say hello to people when they came in for years, and it just went away.
Yeah.
And I was the same way where, it's like Spotify is not representative of the total amount of clicks or whatever that our band or my music, whatever, has gotten at all.
Yeah.
But I just have no interest in sitting there and messaging
Yeah.
playlist curators all
Right.
day.
Yeah, you're supposed to.
But you're supposed to do
There's
it.
a whole grind involved in Spotify that the people who know how to grind it out, they will look like they have a bigger following than they actually have.
That's right. Yeah. I literally have a textbook, like a thick book in my bookshelf there, like how to leverage Spotify. And I read like 3 pages of it, and I was like, I got to write a song or something.
Yeah.
I can't do this. This is not today. All right. So, broadly speaking, right now, hip hop, where we're at, are we in a good place for the genre we're talking all the way across the spectrum? Because it obviously has eclipsed what I guess you would call rock broadly
Yeah.
as the primary genre. I guess whatever pop country is, which I think, to me, that's kind of like McDonald's for music. You know, when you drive by McDonald's and you smell it, they've just engineered it so wicked ingeniously. Hip hop is one of the, I guess, the last free expression platforms that has a mainstream following, other than like basketball or something.
Yeah, but the following it had, the mainstream following it has, is for mainstream artists, and it's all very manufactured. It is McDonald's music. It's always been that way, though, with every popular form of music. Yep. So hip hop, as broad as it is, the popular side of it, they know how to churn out the artists that continue to make music that is predictable enough to use the way the corporations want to use it, and make artists replaceable when need be, and just interchangeable, disposable completely. And that is not new. That's a very old format, very old formula. I think the underground part, if you can even call it underground now, because we all share the same platforms, but it's still just so broad with all different styles. Most of the styles don't get the exposure, don't get the highlights, but they're thriving. Mm-hmm. There's creative people. It's as easy as ever to make a beat. It's as easy as ever to record yourself. So who in that mass saturation is unique enough to stick out and catch enough people's ears where they're able to garner a following that can propel an actual career without having that artist work a day job and just do the music on the side? That's going to be, I think that's every genre probably. Yeah. But with hip hop, it's true. It's much easier. We don't have to have as much equipment. We can literally just record our voices and work on electronic or samples on a computer, and may the best person, fight their way through the paper bag.
Right. No, it's so true. I wonder the conversion rate, like for me, I always think of I started on 93.3 WSNE probably when I was 7 years old, and then all of a sudden you get to Pro FM, then all of a sudden it's BRU, and by the end of it, I'm at a Lightning Bolt show listening to Slint and whatever. So there is a conversion process there, but I don't know what that looks like in hip hop today. I don't know that the average person gets more and more curious about, hey, I like elements of this, but I feel there's something disingenuous, so I want to seek out the real truth.
But that's where Spotify and YouTube come into play now, and that's what makes them so important, where people are getting their suggestions from Spotify and from YouTube. I would say even more so YouTube. That's if someone's playing a video, they get the suggestions on the sidebar.
Yes.
And that's how they start discovering other stuff. I think YouTube, and I'm not here to pump their tires,
right,
but they're better at it than other platforms that I've seen.
Yeah.
And that's how I've discovered other music. But other than that, it's not like radio's breaking artists anymore. We're well beyond that. So we live in a very privileged time where when we think of a song, we can just type it in and there it is.
Yeah. And multiple versions of it.
Yeah.
Live.
Yeah. If you hear a new name, type it in, you get their whole catalog.
Yeah.
It's just so bizarre. It's not anything I grew up with, not anything I thought was possible, and there it is. So now how do you navigate in that new world?
Yeah.
All I know is how to do it myself. All I know is just continue to make the kind of music that is unique to me, that still resonates with others, and make it so that, sure, I've had copycats. I've had people who've made a lot more money off the type of music that I make, but they can't make Sage Francis songs. They can take a vibe, they can kind of riff on a certain weirdness or quirkiness, but they don't really understand what it is that I do. They can only take pieces of it. So that as long as I keep that core and I know what it is, and I stay true to that, I'm fine. I'm okay. And if I ever have to get a day job, I'm going to act like I didn't have a day job. Working a record label is working a day job.
Yeah.
I didn't have to do that. And I almost regret it. But it keeps me alert as to what's going on in the industry, at least. But it's just, certainly you don't reap the rewards of running an indie record label. You just bust your ass.
Yeah.
And hope that, and you're privileged enough to expose more people to great new music. But it's at the end of the day, it's like, man, I really could have just gotten an office job and married Pam.
I know. That's a debate. Sometimes I wonder that too. I'm ultimately glad I did, start podcasting and all this business, but there was a time where I thought maybe the solution is to just go back to doing the temp job
Yeah.
at the reception desk.
I've never done that. I probably would kill myself, but
I'll tell you what.
I fantasize about it.
There-
I did marry my Pam, by the way. I met her on
Yeah.
my job. So.
Well, that helps the cause.
Yeah.
Eventually
it works out.
It's tough to go from for anyone. I mean, it would be tough to go and sit there, and I always feel for if I was stopped at Subway the other day on the way back from New York, and I'm like, how much do you make? Like, like, we went there because somehow we start talking like that. It's like, what are we doing? You know, any menial job would suck for anyone. But I think for an artist, it becomes, after a while, at least for me, it started to go, wow, this is getting pointless, the air I'm breathing. Because if I stare at this person's, if I order another Uber, whatever it was back then, black cab for this, like, finance assistant or whatever to go to his lunch, then I think I'm going to lose my mind.
Yeah.
So it's fat. I don't know how to do it either. No one has given me an answer yet. It's like, here's how you make it work.
I fantasize about it because I'm like, if I worked in an office environment, I'd probably stage a coup at some point, and I would it'd be like Survivor. You know, I'd get like certain people on my team, and we would eliminate the pieces of shit, and then we would overtake the company eventually. So I just spent a lot of time thinking about that.
It's kind of a nice thought.
Yeah. I'm sure a lot of people, that's what gets them through their day.
It is, I'm sure. Yeah, just that moment right there, knowing it could happen at any point in time.
Do it. It can be done.
All right, last couple of minutes here. Let's talk about your upcoming show at the Met, your Farewell Rhode Island show.
Yep.
And is that you or Epic Beardmen?
That's me. It's a solo
Yep.
Sage Francis show, which have been very rare over the past few years because we were doing the Epic Beardmen project, me and B. Dolan. But now we're both just working on solo material again. I've moved away. I officially am a resident of Connecticut. And I just wanted to have one show as an official farewell and just go through the litany of, over the past 20 years, the songs that have stuck out to fans that, let's go through it all and have a fun time. I got Chesky, who's he's from Connecticut, but he runs Fake 4 Records. So is my it's fun just the fact that I have another indie hip hop label owner who also I met in '96. He may be the first person who ever bought a tape off of me. Yeah, and it's like years later I met him again in a different capacity where he was an artist at this point, and then he ran his own record label, and now we're doing shows together all over the world. We've played in we played in Denmark, we played in a couple weird Scandinavian countries, but we get to play in a lot of places in the States. So yeah, he's going to come out. So is Early Adopted. He's from Massachusetts, New Bedford. He's from New Bedford. All great people, all really pushing the limits of what they can do in hip hop. And they're just inspiring. So it's fun. And I don't know a lot of other people left in Rhode Island anymore. A lot of people who I came up with have left, or they're dead, or, they got a family life and they're just not able to push themselves as artists the way they once did. So here we are. Farewell, Rhode Island.
And what's the date?
December 20th at the Met. And this might be one of Mike's last shows too, the promoter.
Oh, Mike D?
Yeah.
Where's he?
I've been working with him for ages. And that's a weird, I don't know if he even wants me to talk about it, but he's kind of moving on. He's owning different businesses.
Yeah, he's got What Cheer down the street from here, basically.
So it's just like, it is a big farewell. I haven't made a big deal about it. I don't want to get all gushy and sentimental, but it is a pretty big deal. It's the fact that I'm even married is a huge deal. I'm raising 2 little girls. That's a huge deal. All this is brand new to me. I've been going through transitions that I've never prepared myself for because I never expected it. You think you have more time to really ease into this type of lifestyle, but nope. You jump in head first. If you swim, you live. If you don't, you sink. I'm not going to sink. I am going to say goodbye to Rhode Island, tell you I love y'all, but I'm out.
Sage Francis, ladies and gentlemen. Rhode Island original, Rhode Island legend.
Strange famous!
As always, thanks so much for spending some time here on the Bartholomew Town Podcast. I'll be back on Friday with a brand new episode. And remember, for daily content, follow Bartholomew Town Podcast on Instagram. Until next time, I'm Bill Bartholomew. We'll talk soon.
At HealthSource RI for Employers, we provide access to health insurance to more than 1,100 local businesses and nonprofits, and 96% of them renew through us every year. Maybe it's our choice of 19 different health plans, our 10 years of customizing solutions, or our one local team of dedicated experts helping employers find quality health insurance. See how our numbers stack up for you. Learn more at healthsourceri.com/employers.